In just 9 seconds, Donald Trump slammed a $250 million lawsuit down on the desk, like a hammer aiming to break the silence. But Jasmine Crockett didn't flinch. She stood up live on national TV, holding a DNA test, a confidentiality agreement, and the name of the daughter he paid to keep under wraps. What hidden truth could be worth millions? And why did Jasmine risk everything to share it with the world? The studio lights were blinding, exposing the reality in a way that felt almost painful. At the lectern in Mar-a-Lago, Trump adjusted his cuffs with a dramatic touch. Cameras clicked away like gunshots. This wasn't about policy, it was performance. That morning, he declared, his voice low and heavy, almost threatening, I filed a $250 million lawsuit against Representative Jasmine Crockett. He let the words hang for effect. She spread a lie about me, my family, about a daughter who doesn't exist. The gasps in the room didn't come from shock. They were born from anticipation. Trump scanned the audience, his gaze sharpening as if he could already see the headlines. Let this be a warning, he went on. No one, no matter how radical or progressive, gets away with defaming the Trump name. He didn't bother to repeat her name. It was unnecessary. Every news outlet would do that. Every screen would flash it in bold red. Meanwhile, across the country, one name was already rising to the surface, Jasmine Crockett. Miles away, right under the marble dome of the Capitol, Jasmine stood at a wooden podium, speaking about a housing oversight bill. Her voice was calm and precise, laced with a quiet strength. When public housing funds disappear into shell companies, the people who vanish with them aren't just numbers, they're mothers, veterans, and elders. Suddenly, an aide rushed through a side door, his steps shaky as he nearly stumbled, but then he picked up the pace, clearly carrying urgent news. He placed a crisp envelope on Jasmine's desk without a word, just the seal, Southern District of Florida. Legal notice, marked priority. Jasmine didn't miss a beat. She turned a page in her binder, wrapped up her sentence, then reached under the desk. The envelope opened with a soft snap. Inside was a white folder with gold lettering, Trump vs. Crockett, civil defamation, $250 million. No flinch, no gasp, just a quiet breath she held back from the microphone. She tapped the folder once with her thumb, as if testing a weapon, then shut it. Representative Jim Jordan, sitting just a few chairs away, leaned in closer. Everything okay, Congresswoman? His voice dripped with insincerity, barely hiding his pleasure. Jasmine didn't even look at him. Perfectly fine, she answered. Then, as if nothing had shifted, she turned to the committee chair and said, I'd like to request a change to next week's agenda, specifically regarding Tuesday's hearing. Jordan's brow furrowed. Why Tuesday? She met his gaze head-on. The murmurs in the room dropped a notch. Because I'll be initiating discovery. Her voice was steady, but the atmosphere around her grew tense. The chamber seemed to hold its breath. C-SPAN's red light flickered on, almost reluctantly. In the back row, a reporter whispered, what did she just say? The folder slipped into Jasmine's briefcase quietly, but one camera caught her eyes. They weren't fiery or blinking, they were calculating. Outside, the news hit like a meteor. Breaking, Trump files $250 million defamation suit against Jasmine Crockett. Crockett responds, let the facts speak. In the hallway, her press secretary's phone started buzzing with calls. Inside, Jasmine continued her speech about housing, but now her tone had a sharper edge, as if she knew this was about something bigger than just shelter or costs. She stood on the brink of something profound. She had been handed a spark, and the man who thought he'd laid a trap had no idea what he had actually set in motion. What kind of truth would push a billionaire to sue before anyone even gets the chance to speak? Jasmine didn't wait for the hearing to wrap up. As soon as her microphone turned off, she ducked into a side hallway, holding an envelope under her coat like it was something illicit. No press, no aides, just her, battling the storm in her chest, surrounded by a silence that felt like a ticking clock. A couple of floors down, behind a locked door marked secure briefing, no devices, the real meeting awaited. The air didn't feel cold, but it was sharp against her skin. At the far end of a heavy oak table sat Representative Ayanna Pressley, looking calm yet tense. Next to her, Jamie Raskin leaned in, already poring over an open legal file. Right in the center, with a look as sharp as her hairstyle, sat Gloria Allred. Jasmine placed the Trump lawsuit on the table. It's done, she said. He took the bait. Gloria didn't crack a smile. Instead, she rummaged through her briefcase and pulled out a weighty item, a thick red file, taped at the edges, marked with a single name in bold black, Meredith vs. Trump, GIC 2214. Ayanna leaned in closer, her curiosity piqued. He really filed this? Jasmine nodded. This morning, before I even had a chance to speak. Jamie let out a sharp breath. So he just handed us something he's never given before, discovery. Gloria broke the seal on the file. Inside was a buried truth, hidden by money. A notarized DNA test from Atlanta Medical Center showing a 99.94% match, 3 signed NDAs, redacted except for one name, Tiana Meredith, and a wire transfer log revealing $4.2 million sent through a shell company to a woman in Decatur, Georgia, with the memo line reading, Education Trust. No legal filing, no custody battle, just silence, enforced and contracted. Tiana murmured, he bought her disappearance. Jasmine's fingers brushed against the edge of the DNA test but didn't lift it. Instead, she took out an old envelope from her purse, postmarked February 2022, no return address, just shaky black ink that read, to Congresswoman Crockett, private. She opened it, scanning the words she'd memorized countless times. I know you don't know me, but I know him. I've known him my whole life, even if he hasn't said my name. I'm his daughter, but I was never born legally. Gloria tapped the payment log. This is enough to reopen the case. Once he sued you, the gag order was lifted due to public interest. The court can't protect both sides anymore. Jasmine's gaze landed on a photo clip to the DNA report, a young woman with hazel eyes and dark curls, bearing the same jawline as Trump did at 30. Even before dawn broke, Rayburn streets buzzed with tension. Floodlights pierced the darkness like beams used to expose secrets. Protesters filled the sidewalks, some donned red hats, fists raised in defiance, while others waved signs scrawled with Tiana's name in bold black letters. One sign proclaimed Jasmine is America's daughter, while another shouted, "Stop the smear." Amid the uproar, a remix of Trump's voice blared through the air, "I don't know her." Inside her office, Jasmine Crockett stood before a mirror, not fussing with makeup or checking for flaws, but simply remaining still. Her fingers traced the folded edge of a document she'd read countless times. The final paragraph of the lawsuit seemed to glare back at her, oozing arrogance. Respondent has fabricated a fictitious narrative that constitutes irreparable harm to the Trump legacy. She read it out loud, her voice flat and emotionless, then tucked it away. Her reflection stayed firm. A faint smile, or perhaps a challenge, curled her lips. Let's see how fiction plays out in reality. Just then, the door clicked open. Ayanna Pressley stepped in, her eyes sweeping over a prepboard filled with photos, timelines, and newspaper clippings. You've got 10 minutes, she said. The cameras are ready. Jasmine nodded, grabbed her briefcase, and cast a glance at the headline plastered at the center of the board, Forgotten Daughter Whistleblower Claims DNA Linked to Trump. Outside in the hallway, the atmosphere felt tense, footsteps echoing loudly. Aides hustled alongside her, murmuring updates about schedules, briefings, and exits. But Jasmine kept her focus, walking on. By the time she reached the first floor, she faced a wall of reporters, dozens deep. Camera flashes burst like fireworks. Microphones poked at her like javelins. A Newsmax reporter shouted, "Are you prepared to ruin your career over a girl no one knows?" Another chimed in, "Congresswoman, are you just using a fake daughter for political gain?" Jasmine didn't answer. She moved through the cacophony like someone who'd weighed the risks and decided the flame was worth it. Upstairs, the oversight chamber glimmered like a stage. Chairs stood ready, folders neatly piled, and one seat bore her nameplate, crisp, unmoving. She sat down without a moment's pause, placing the red file, Tiana's file, before her like a protective barrier. A murmur swept across the bench. One aide leaned toward another, saying, "She's really doing it. She's bringing the daughter in." The other aide didn't respond, just turned to watch the door, swallowing hard. Outside, chants began to swell, some called her a liar, others a hero. Jasmine blocked it all out. Her hand rested on the sealed envelope holding the DNA test. She didn't need to prove anything just yet, but she would. She stared at the empty witness chair, knowing that was the seat that could change everything. Then, softly, she spoke, not to herself, but to the girl who had waited 25 years for someone to speak up. "I've got you. What would you risk to be the voice for someone who's been silenced for a quarter century?" The room felt tiny, with no windows, designed to keep sound out, but for Tiana Meredith, it was louder than the chaos outside. The silence buzzed in her ears, drowning out protests, threats, and the weight of 25 years spent feeling invisible. She was sitting across from Jasmine Crockett, her fingers gripping a crumpled piece of notebook paper so tightly that her knuckles turned white. It was a letter she'd written 3 years earlier, never sent and never spoken aloud. But Jasmine had urged her to read it, to finally give voice to what she'd kept inside. With trembling hands, Tiana slowly unfolded the paper, her breath shaky at first but then gaining steadiness. She began, "Dear Mr. Trump, you probably won't remember me, but I remember you. When I was 12, I stood in the hallway of Mar-a-Lago next to my mom, clutching a Shirley Temple and hoping I wouldn't spill it. You walked past, looked right at me, and told her, 'She's got my nose.' She laughed. I cried. She had told me who you were the night before, and you said it like a joke." Jasmine didn't interrupt, didn't blink, just watched Tiana's lips move, slowly but surely, each word peeling away years of silence. "You never touched me, never spoke my name. But you saw me, and then you turned away." Tiana folded the letter once more, her hands still trembling. Jasmine reached out, gently covering them with her own. "You don't have to stay invisible anymore," she said, her voice calm, not overdramatic, just giving Tiana permission. Tiana's voice wavered. It's not just about being ignored. It's about being erased. She pulled out a crumpled, faded photo from her bag, a blurry snapshot of her on a marble staircase in Florida, with Trump half visible in the background. Jasmine examined it and nodded. Where was this? Mar-a-Lago? Tiana whispered, 2 days after New Year's, 2011. My mom told the staff we were there to see her business partner. They didn't ask any questions. Jasmine looked at the expression frozen on young Tiana's face, pride mixed with pain, a girl longing to be acknowledged, while a man acted like he didn't see her. I kept the picture, Tiana explained, so I wouldn't think I made it all up. Jasmine folded it carefully, not to hide it but to keep it safe. You didn't make anything up. He did. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Jasmine opened her binder, sliding the DNA results across the table. Tiana glanced at them quickly, then looked away. He always knew, she said. Jasmine nodded, adding, but now the world will, too. Outside, cameras were set up, journalists were sharpening their questions, and Congress members were huddling, whispering strategies. Inside, it was just the two of them, one woman learning to speak, the other determined not to let her voice fade away again. Are you ready? Jasmine asked gently. Tiana stared at the door, her shoulders rising and falling as she let go of a lifetime's worth of unclaimed permission. I've been ready since I was 12. How do you tell the world you exist when its most powerful man denies your very being? Tiana had heard all the figures before, the millions involved, the timelines, the terms. But when she heard it again, it struck her anew, making her flinch. The room looked the same, and Jasmine's voice was steady, yet the paper in Tiana's hand seemed to weigh heavier than ever. This wasn't just gossip, it was contract law. Jasmine flipped to page 4, the crease still fresh even after all this time. She took her time, reading the words as they were. Clause 6.2, paternity test results are to remain sealed indefinitely. Public acknowledgement of paternity is prohibited under penalty of civil forfeiture. Any attempt to disclose, publish, or confirm parentage, whether through speech, interview, or documentation, shall void this agreement. Signed, Donald J. Trump. Witnessed Melania nouse Trump. Tiana stared at the signature, half expecting it to disappear, but it didn't. Ink, intent, silence. My mom said this was for my future, she murmured, that if we signed, I'd never have to worry about college, medical bills, nothing. Her voice shook. But what kind of future can you build when your name is the one thing you can't say? Jasmine carefully closed the folder, as if it might hurt to leave it open. She signed under pressure, out of fear. That doesn't make it true. It makes it a deal. Tiana's hands tightened in her lap. He paid to make me disappear, she said, her voice rising. He paid to erase his own child. The air felt heavy. Jasmine let the silence hang there, recognizing that sometimes it conveyed more than words ever could. He saw my face, Tiana continued, her eyes glistening. He looked right at me and still signed that paper. Jasmine stood up, walked over to a cabinet, and pulled out the original envelope, postmarked 2018. Bearing the Trump Organization's gold embossed seal and the word confidential in bold print. This is the version your mother kept, she explained. The original NDA, DNA results, payment receipts all tucked away in a case sealed in Georgia for national security considerations. Tiana blinked, confused. National security? Jasmine nodded slowly. That was the excuse, just like they use for buried settlements, closed courtrooms, and silenced victims. Tiana looked down at her hands. So, am I a national threat now? Jasmine leaned closer, her voice low. You're a threat to the version of him that the world knows, the one without consequences, without daughters he doesn't want to name. Tiana's voice wavered. Am I still real? Jasmine didn't respond with words. Instead, she placed the NDA next to the DNA test results and slid them toward Tiana like they were evidence in a courtroom. You've always been real. They just hoped no one would be brave enough to say it out loud. Outside, the noise of reporters and protesters blended together. Inside, one undeniable truth lingered, clearly documented. What does justice look like when your very existence has been bought and buried? The atmosphere was so still after the clause was read, it felt like even the air was holding its breath, waiting for Tiana to make her move. She remained completely still, her fists clenched and jaw tight, carrying something far heavier than just anger. Jasmine observed quietly, not rushing her. Some decisions can only be made through hardship. Tiana finally lifted her gaze, her eyes fierce. Now I want to speak, she declared, her voice steady, though a slight quiver betrayed her nerves. Not just for me, but for the other girls who won't get the chance, the ones who signed documents they couldn't understand, had no legal representation, or thought that remaining silent was their best option. Jasmine's face tightened, not from doubt but from understanding. You know how the media works, she cautioned. They'll dig into your words, twist them around, plaster your pictures everywhere, turning your story into sensationalism and your suffering into entertainment. Tiana held her ground. Let them try. She leaned in, her voice building with intensity. I've stayed quiet for too long. I was erased before I even had a chance to exist. I won't let him keep that hold over me anymore. Tiana, who was sitting next to them, nodded seriously. Then we move forward with a plan, not just anger. Just then, Jamie Raskin walked in, a file tucked under his arm, already knowing what had been decided. 3 stages, he said straight away. First stage, a public oversight hearing, with Jasmine in charge, asking controlled questions and ensuring full transparency. Second stage, Tiana's live testimony, 5 minutes long, raw and unedited, broadcast on all networks. Third stage, Gloria will submit sealed documents, payment records, NDAs, DNA tests, directly to the DOJ, ensuring they can't be hidden or turned back. No shady deals behind closed doors. As Tiana glanced around, something shifted. For the first time, she didn't seem overwhelmed. She seemed strong. I want to read my letter, she said firmly, the one I never sent, during the hearing, into the microphone. Jasmine nodded slightly. Write your name at the top. Let everyone see it. Without hesitation, Tiana picked up the letter and wrote in clear block letters, Tiana Meredith, then added 2 words below, daughter, testifying. Outside, the press swarmed like sharks sensing blood in the water. News of the lawsuit was everywhere, but inside, a different kind of storm was brewing, not one of anger, but of truth prepared to be spoken. Jasmine looked at Tiana, pride shining in her eyes. You're more than just a witness, she said. You're the earthquake they didn't see coming. Tiana nodded, determination settling in. Then let's make it count. What happens when a forgotten daughter steps into Congress with everything to gain?